What's up, guys? We have a very interesting matchup to be talking about. Two teams that had passion in the first round, and this is why they're moving on. The Toronto Maple Leafs finally, after 19 years of suffering, have finally won a playoff round. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay Lightning, went to the Stanley Cup Finals three times. They won two Stanley Cups in the last couple of years. So there's a lot of Toronto fans that are very proud of their team. And finally, they get what they deserve, a win after all these years of suffering. And they're going to be facing off against the Florida Panthers. And the Florida Panthers, with their passion and their motivation, because they're regarded as the underdogs, take down the Boston Bruins, who are arguably the best regular season team in NHL history. And people are saying that it's the biggest NHL upset ever. And Matthew Kachuk, has stated it too in his interview post game, saying that a lot of people doubted us. A lot of people thought that, it was not possible. People were saying that we're going to be swept. We're going to lose in 5 games. And we did the unthinkable and we took them to 7 games and we beat them. There was a 43-point difference between the Panthers and the Bruins, which is the largest upset in Stanley Cup history in terms of a best of 7 games. So, that's impressive too. But both these teams are coming in hot. Both these teams had a lot of things going against themselves. They exercised their demons, and now they're facing off against each other for the very first time in playoff history. So the question is here, do both teams come in, guns blazing with a lot of passion, or one of the teams, takes a step back and says, we did what we had to do in the first round, and now in the second round, like, we're gonna take this for granted type of thing. Like, oh, we did what we had to do. Like, I'm scared of Toronto, like, kind of like celebrated, and they think that, like, they won their Stanley Cup because they finally exercised their demons in winning a first round series. And I'm scared that Florida may feel the same way after taking down the biggest and best team in the NHL. So I'm really hoping that both teams come in with a lot of passion and they bring on over the passion from the first round into the second round against each other. But someone has to win at the end of the day. Whether if it goes to 6 games or 7 games or it's a sweep, someone has to win. And my pick, because I think they're just on a miracle run right now, and they deserve it. They finally exercise their demons, like I was saying. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs win in 6 games.
Well, first of all, I think both teams are going to be super motivated. I think it's actually going to be the opposite than what you're saying, because the reason I say that is because if you're Toronto or Florida, this is huge for you, right? Florida hasn't made it past the second round, I believe, ever, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it's been a long
Well,
time.
Florida beat the Washington Capitals last year, and they got swept
Okay,
by Tampa Bay in the second
last year.
round
Okay,
last
that's
year.
it. That's it. So they beat That's it. Okay, so they beat Washington last year and then lost Tampa. Fine. But the point is that this is two teams that have a lot to prove, right? And Florida proved, I think, more than Toronto did. And the reason I say that is because Florida played a Bruins team that was stacked, right? I know that Bruins had injuries, but when the Bruins were fully healthy in the playoffs, now, regardless of whether Bergeron, Krejci, and even Linus Ullmark were healthy is besides the point. They were in the lineup. When they had those guys in the lineup, Florida went 3-0, right? With Krejci, with Bergeron in the lineup, Florida went 3-0, which is crazy. But I look at it this way: these are two teams that are gonna, find a way to prove themselves. I think this is two teams that know what the circumstances are, right? They know that whoever wins goes to the conference final, which both teams haven't seen, in a long time. In fact, Toronto hasn't seen it since I don't even know when, but since 2004 they weren't there. So it's been a long time for Toronto. And for Florida, I mean, I don't think they've ever made it to the conference final, if I'm not mistaken. So for either team, like, this is an opportunity where you're like, okay, if we win this series, we may actually have a chance to go to the cup. Now, in my opinion, and I have a biased opinion on this, and then I have a realistic opinion on this. So my biased opinion is that, to be honest, I don't like either team, and I kind of want both teams to lose, because at the end of the day, I don't want Toronto to win because I'm a Habs fan, but I also don't want Florida to win, because if Florida wins, then Montreal's pick goes from 17 to 29. However, from a realistic perspective, I think this series is actually going to be pretty one-sided. And what I mean by that is I think Toronto's going to absolutely steamroll Florida. Like it's not going to be close. And I know that I said that about the Bruins and then Florida came and won and they proved everybody wrong. But Toronto, after beating Tampa, I think they're on a mission. I think they know that they have a chance here to go to the potentially even to the cup final and make a run here and make history. And I think it's an opportunity for them that they're not going to want to take. I think that Matthews has stepped it up in the playoffs. Marner's played a really big factor for them. Morgan Riley's been really good. They've had great goaltending from Ilya Samsonov. I just think that everything that's going right for Toronto is going right. And I think for Florida, as much as what they did was spectacular and miraculous, they have their flaws. Right? This is a team that lets in a lot of goals. This is a team that defensively is not very good. And Toronto is going from playing against arguably one of the best goaltenders in the league in Andrei Vasilevsky and absolutely demolishing him and dominating him to one of the goaltenders that's been the most inconsistent in the league in Sergei Bobrovsky, right? So that's where I think this series is won, in the sense where I think Toronto just got the better team all around. I think they've got better offense. I think they've got better defense. And I think they've got the better goaltender in net. And I think that, arguably speaking, I think that Florida is going to struggle against Toronto, because I think Toronto is just better suited overall than Florida. I know we said that about the Bruins, but Toronto's healthy, and Toronto does not have a flaw right now. Like they don't have a flaw other than the fact that, look, their history does, the history they were worried was going to repeat themselves, and they did it. They ended up beating Tampa, who were in the final last year. So I think Toronto's going to do it. I think Toronto's going to do it in 5, maybe 6. I don't think this series goes to 7. However, I've been wrong before. For me, I think Florida's MVP is Matt Tkachuk. I think Toronto's going to have a tough time stopping Matthew Tkachuk, but I don't think that Matthew Tkachuk alone is going to bring Florida past Toronto. I think Toronto's just got too many superstars and too many really good players that I think this series is going to be going in Toronto's favor.
Well, the Toronto Maple Leafs players are probably having an amazing time in the playoffs because they're back in Florida once again. So they're going to be enjoying, the sun and the beach when they're not playing. So, I mean, that's going to be pretty fun for them. But, yeah, like I said, realistically, like, I think Toronto takes it in 6. They're on a mission, like you said, and like I alluded to before. Matthew Tkachuk was the MVP in the first series. Austin Matthews was Toronto's MVP in the first series. And Brandon Montour, fantastic defenseman, takes over Mackenzie Weegar as the offensive-minded defenseman. He showed it a lot in the first round against the Boston Bruins. But, Barkov, Bennett, Reinhart, everyone stepped up. Everyone did what they had to do. They were getting goals from their depth forwards as well, and defensemen. Everyone had to play everyone played the way they were supposed to. Lyon, obviously, he started the first couple of games. Then Bobrovsky comes back, and he comes back in full force and in full form. So that was the Bobrovsky they needed. And Bobrovsky was part of the Columbus Blue Jackets team that swept the Tampa Bay Lightning when, Tampa Bay were the favorites. So it's not the first time that Bobrovsky does this. But in terms of Toronto's goaltending and in terms of the team in general, Eli Samsonov outplayed Vasilevsky. And not only that, defensively, they weren't the best Toronto, but, it's always been like that. They've always been more of an offensive-minded team. They let in a lot of goals throughout the series against Tampa, but so did Tampa. Tampa let in a lot of goals too, and I'm expecting this series to be high-scoring as well. Florida scored a lot of goals against the Bruins, and the Bruins scored a lot of goals on the Florida Panthers, so I'm expecting that to repeat itself once again. But in terms of points in the playoffs, Mitch Marner, one of the best players in the playoffs, followed by Matthews and Morgan Riley. A lot of people were doubting him, saying that, he's really taking a step down throughout the season. But he comes back in full form and bounces back in the playoffs when it matters the most. And, William Nylander proving once again that he's consistent. He's a good player. Ryan O'Reilly, a playoff performer, essentially maybe the missing piece for the Toronto Maple Leafs to get over the hump. He's playing well too. John Tavares, winning it in overtime to eliminate Tampa Bay and get his team to the second round. Toronto native, so that's amazing. Matthew Nyes, coming from the NCAA, playing 5 games in the playoffs, pretty impressive. Everyone's been getting points. The only thing that I would have to say about Toronto is that Michael Bunting needs to bounce back, because that suspension in the first round and the way he played was not ideal, and it could have cost the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm expecting him to bounce back, and they have depth. Just looking at McCabe, Shen, Liljegren, they have a lot of depth on terms of in terms of defense, something that the Florida Panthers don't have. So if I have to look at it, I would say that Toronto wins in every aspect in terms of top six, bottom six, defense, and goaltending. But do not count Florida out, because Florida, was the inferior team compared to the Boston Bruins. And yeah, Tyler Bertuzzi and Dmitry Orlov, two trade deadline acquisitions, did amazing, but the other guys didn't really do that much. Pasternak played well, but you know, Krejci and Bergeron, they could have been a lot better. Hathaway that they added didn't really do much. There was some, room for improvement essentially. And the Boston Bruins we got was not the same Boston Bruins that we saw in the regular season. So I'm expecting, Florida to be very proud of what they have accomplished and to continue. And look, Matthew Tkachuk, 11 points. Brandon Montour that follows him behind him. Carter Verhaeghe, who eliminated the Boston Bruins in OT. He's been playing well. And what a story he's been, going from Tampa Bay, completely like letting him go, and then Florida taking a chance on him. He's been one of their best players in the last couple of years. He's become a core player for the Florida Panthers. Sam Reinhart and Bennett that they added last year.
Former Leaf, by the way, Carter Verhaeghe.
Yeah, he's a former Leaf too. So, he might want some revenge too on that. So, Bennett and Reinhardt, fantastic players as well. Their depth, Lundell, Cousins, Stahl, Stahl's always been known to be a good playoff performer. And him and Maurice went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2006 and won the cup together. So there's a connection there too. So just looking at their depth as well. Yeah, there's a couple of players that don't have any points, like Mark Stahl and Ryan Lumberg and Aaron Ekblad. Aaron Ekblad needs to be better if they want to go far and they want to eliminate the Toronto Maple Leafs. He needs to get on the board in terms of his offensive stats. But at the end of the day, guys, we'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Who wins this series, the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Florida Panthers? It's going to be an exciting one. Expect a lot of goals, a lot of fights. When you have Matthew Tkachuk and Michael
and Radko Gudas.
And Radko Gudas as well, you're going to expect a lot of fights. And we saw Austin Matthews drop the gloves with Steven Stamkos. So, he has some fire inside of him too. Toronto is definitely a different breed this year. And, I do think that they have it in them to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. But we'll see what happens. Let's take it series by series, guys. If you haven't liked this video, please like this video. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Young Guns Podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for watching.